Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Consultation. Clay Groves sat in Dr. Harold Cherry's office, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Across from him, his wife Emma fidgeted with her purse strap, her eyes darting between the neurologist and the door. 4 years of these appointments, 4 years of hoping she'd remember their life before the accident, and still nothing but hollow smiles and rehearsed responses. "Mr. Groves," Dr. Cherry said, reviewing the MRI scans on his computer screen, "the results show no physical trauma that would explain the continued memory loss. In fact, the patterns we're seeing are unusual." Emma leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "I'd like to run some additional tests." The doctor's voice was steady, but Clay noticed how his fingers trembled slightly as he typed. "Mrs. Groves, would you mind stepping out to provide a urine sample? The nurse at the front desk will direct you." "Of course." Emma stood, clutching her purse tightly against her side. Something about the way she held it made Clay's architect's eye catch. The weight distribution was wrong, like she was carrying something heavy on one side. The moment the door closed, Dr. Cherry rolled his chair closer, his professional demeanor cracking. "Mr. Groves, you need to contact the authorities immediately." His voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Your daughter." The door swung open. Emma stood in the threshold, her expression unreadable. "I forgot to ask where the restroom was." Her hand remained buried in her purse, and Clay saw her knuckles were white from gripping something. Dr. Cherry straightened, his face pale. "Down the hall, second door on the left." Emma's eyes lingered on both of them for a beat too long before she turned away. Clay waited until her footsteps faded. "What about my daughter?" "That child isn't." Dr. Cherry glanced at the door, then pulled out a business card and scribbled something on the back. "This is my personal number. Whatever you do, don't let on that you suspect anything. She's dangerous, Mr. Groves. I treated your family before the accident. That woman is not your wife, and that little girl is not Audrey." The words hit Clay like a wrecking ball, but he kept his face neutral. Years of client presentations had taught him to mask his reactions. He pocketed the card just as Emma returned, the weight in her purse still present. "All set?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "All set," Clay replied, placing his hand on the girl's shoulder again. The child, whoever she was, remained silent, just as she'd been for most of the appointment. His real Audrey had been a chatterbox. They drove home in silence. Clay watched Emma in the passenger seat, really looked at her for the first time in months. The way she held herself, the small mannerisms. Now that the seed of doubt was planted, everything seemed wrong. The scar above her left eyebrow from when she'd fallen off her bike as a kid was positioned slightly too high. Her laugh, which he'd attributed to trauma-induced changes, had a different quality entirely. That night, after putting the fake Audrey to bed, Clay stood in his home office, staring at the architectural plans for his latest project. But his mind was elsewhere, cataloging 4 years of subtle inconsistencies he'd dismissed. The way Emma recoiled from mushrooms, his real wife's favorite food. How she claimed not to remember their honeymoon in Barcelona, a trip they'd never taken. They'd gone to Iceland. The birthmark his daughter had on her left ankle. This child had clear skin. He'd been living with strangers. Imposters who knew just enough to be convincing, but not enough to be perfect. The real question that kept him awake that night: where was his real daughter, and what had happened to his wife? Chapter 2. Before the Fall. 4 years and 2 months earlier. Daddy watched. 6-year-old Audrey Groves launched herself off the rope swing, landing in a giggling heap on the grass. The real Emma, Clay's actual wife, laughed from the patio, her hand shading her eyes from the autumn sun. "Careful, Firefly," Clay called out, using his nickname for his daughter. "You're going to give your mother a heart attack." "I'm already having one," Emma said, but she was smiling. "Come eat before the lasagna gets cold." That Sunday afternoon represented everything Clay had built. A successful architecture firm with projects across 3 states. A beautiful home he designed himself in the suburbs of Richmond, Virginia, and a family that made every challenge worthwhile. Emma worked as a freelance photographer, her studio attached to the house. Audrey attended Riverside Elementary and wanted to be an astronaut veterinarian when she grew up. Clay's phone buzzed. A text from his cousin-in-law, Wanda Gordon. Sorry to miss lunch. Car trouble. We'll visit next week. He'd never warmed to Wanda, Emma's distant cousin who'd moved to Richmond 6 months prior. There was something calculating in her eyes, a hunger that made him uncomfortable. Emma, ever generous, had helped Wanda find an apartment and introduced her to their social circle. Is Wanda okay? Emma asked, reading over his shoulder. Says her car broke down. Again? That's the 3rd time this month. Emma frowned. Maybe we should help her get a new one. That was his Emma, always thinking of others, sometimes to a fault. 2 weeks later, Clay returned from a site inspection in Norfolk to find police cars in his driveway. A detective with tired eyes and a notebook introduced himself as Detective Stanley Francis. Mr. Groves, there's been an accident. The words that followed came in fragments. Head-on collision. Drunk driver crossed the median. Emma was killed instantly. Audrey in ICU with severe trauma. Clay remembered screaming, remembered the hospital's fluorescent lights, remembered Audrey's small body hooked to machines, her head wrapped in bandages. The doctor said she'd survive, but couldn't predict the extent of brain damage. Wanda appeared at the hospital that night. Clay, I'm so sorry. Emma was like a sister to me. Whatever you need, I'm here. Through the fog of grief, Clay barely noticed her. 3 months later, Audrey was recovering better than expected, physically, but the vibrant child who'd jumped from swings was gone, replaced by a quiet, withdrawn girl who barely spoke. Doctors attributed it to trauma, said she might improve with time and therapy. Wanda had become a constant presence, helping with meals, managing Audrey's medical appointments, filling the void Emma left. Clay, drowning in grief and trying to keep his business afloat, was grateful. You should come to dinner in my place, Wanda suggested one evening. Meet my boyfriend Kyle. He's been wanting to meet you. Says he admires your work. Kyle McKee was tall, charming, with slick back hair and a salesman's smile. He worked in investments, which Clay found deliberately vague, but Wanda seemed happy. Over the following months, Wanda practically moved in. Audrey seemed comfortable with her, which Clay took as a positive sign. His daughter was finally speaking again, relearning social skills. Then came the day, 9 months after Emma's death, when Wanda approached Clay with tears in her eyes. I've been thinking, she said. You know how much Emma meant to me. And I've been researching. There's a clinic in Switzerland that does incredible work with plastic surgery. Identity restoration procedures for accident victims, that sort of thing. She pulled out a brochure. What if I try to look like Emma? For Audrey's sake. The doctors say familiar faces help with childhood trauma. Clay should have seen it then. Should have recognized the manipulation. But he was exhausted, broken, and desperate to help his daughter. Wanda, I don't know if that's healthy. Just think about it. For Audrey. Present day. Clay sat in his office, reviewing bank statements from 4 years ago. The life insurance payout for Emma, $2 million. He'd signed control over to Emma, Wanda, 18 months ago, when she convinced him it would help her feel more integrated into their life. His business accounts showed systematic drainage, small amounts regularly transferred to offshore holdings he didn't recognize. He pulled up the police report from Emma's accident. The drunk driver, Floyd Monroe, had died at the scene. No family, no one to question the official story. Convenient. Clay opened his laptop and began a new document, Project Restoration. If these imposters had studied him, learned to replicate his life, then he would study them right back. And he'd use every skill he possessed to tear their facade apart. But first, he needed to know, was his real daughter alive? Chapter 3. Cracks in the Foundation. Clay implemented his investigation with the same precision he applied to his architectural designs. Phase 1. Documentation. He installed miniature cameras throughout the house, in the living room bookshelf, the kitchen cabinet, his home office. Devices small enough to be invisible, but sophisticated enough to capture everything. The next morning, he initiated Phase 2. Testing. Emma, do you remember that restaurant where we had our first date? Clay asked over coffee, watching her face carefully. Of course, she said without hesitation. That Italian place on Main Street. You ordered the chicken parmesan. Wrong on both counts. Their first date had been a Vietnamese restaurant on Grove Avenue, and he'd ordered pho. The real Emma would have corrected him, laughed at his terrible attempt to use chopsticks. Right, Clay said, smiling. Good memory. Something flickered in her eyes. Relief, maybe, or triumph. She thought she'd passed his test. Throughout the day, he continued. Small questions, subtle traps. Emma failed every single one, but her confidence never wavered. She'd been trained well, Clay realized, given just enough information to seem plausible, but not enough to withstand scrutiny. That afternoon, while Emma was out grocery shopping, Clay focused on the child. The girl who was supposed to be his daughter sat in the living room, coloring with mechanical precision. Hey, Firefly, he said softly, using Audrey's nickname. The girl looked up, confusion crossing her face. My name is Audrey. His real daughter would have responded to Firefly instantly. It had been their special name, born from a camping trip when she was 4 and obsessed with catching lightning bugs. Right, sorry. Audrey, can I see your ankle for a second? I thought you had a scrape. She extended her left leg. Clear skin. No birthmark. His real Audrey had a distinctive strawberry-shaped mark on her left ankle, something that had been there since birth. Clay felt his chest tighten, but kept his expression neutral. My mistake. Looks fine. That evening, he reviewed the camera footage while Emma was in the shower. What he saw confirmed his darkest suspicions. The girl frequently glanced at Emma before answering questions, seeking approval or guidance. At one point, when she thought she was alone, she pulled out a small notebook and reviewed it, a script of Clay and Audrey's history. But the most damning footage came at 2:17 a.m. Clay watched on his phone from his locked office as Emma crept downstairs, made a phone call in whispers. Getting suspicious, she hissed. We might need to move up the timeline. No, I can handle it. The gun's ready. Tuesday night, when he gets home from the Norfolk site. Make it look like a robbery. Clay's blood ran cold. Tuesday was 3 days away. He spent Monday following Emma on her errands. She drove to a property in Hopewell, an hour south, an abandoned industrial building Clay didn't recognize. She went inside for 40 minutes. When she emerged, she was with Kyle McKee. Clay waited until they left, then approached the building. The lock was basic, easy to pick with tools from his car. Inside, the space was mostly empty except for a makeshift apartment in the back corner. His heart nearly stopped when he saw her. Audrey, his real daughter, now 10 years old, thin and frightened, chained to a radiator with enough slack to reach a mattress and a bucket. She had his eyes, Emma's smile, and that birthmark on her left ankle. Daddy, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Clay wanted to grab her and run, but he forced himself to think strategically. If he rescued her now, Emma and Kyle would disappear, and he'd never get the full truth. He needed evidence, needed to ensure they'd pay for everything. Firefly, I found you, he said, kneeling beside her. But I need you to be brave a little longer. Can you do that? They said they'd kill you if I tried to escape or tell anyone. They said Mommy was dead because of me. Rage burned through Clay's veins, but he kept his voice steady. None of this is your fault. Your mom loved you more than anything. These people are liars. He examined the chain, padlocked but manageable. I'm going to get you out, but I need to do it smart. 2 more days. Can you hold on? Audrey nodded, brave despite her tears. I knew you'd find me. I knew you'd come. Clay took photos of everything. The chains, the conditions, Audrey's scared face. Then he did something that broke his heart. He left her there. But he placed a small GPS tracker on the radiator and a prepaid phone under the mattress. If anything happens, you call 911 with this. Hide it well. I'll be back Tuesday, I promise. On his way out, Clay examined the building's structure with professional eyes. It was his job to understand how buildings worked, how they stood, how they could be controlled. Ideas began forming. That night, he called Dr. Cherry from a burner phone. Dr. Cherry, it's Clay Groves. I need your help documenting everything you know about Emma and Audrey, the real ones. Medical records, dental records, any evidence that proves who they were. I've already started, the doctor said. I recognized something was wrong the moment I saw her. Your wife had a distinctive genetic marker in her blood work, I'd flagged it years ago as part of research study. That woman has different DNA entirely. And the child's bone structure is all wrong for someone who supposedly was in that car accident. Can you testify to this? Absolutely. But Mr. Groves, what are you planning? To make sure they never hurt anyone again, Clay said. And to get my daughter back. He hung up and opened his laptop. Project Restoration moved into Phase 3, the trap. He began drafting plans, both architectural and tactical. By morning, he had a complete strategy. The imposters had studied him, learned his routines, planned his murder. Now Clay would show them what a real architect could build. Not just structures, but the perfect cage. Chapter 4. The Hidden Foundation. Clay spent Tuesday morning at his firm, acting as if nothing were amiss. He met with clients, reviewed blueprints for a new hospital wing, approved contractor bids. But his mind was elsewhere, calculating angles and timing with the precision that had made him one of Richmond's premier architects. At lunch, he drove to a storage facility across town and retrieved items he'd stashed the night before: industrial-grade chains, padlocks, welding equipment, and a folder thick with printed evidence. Everything he'd need. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "What time will you be home? Making your favorite, pot roast." Clay smiled grimly. His real Emma knew he hated pot roast. He'd been allergic to carrots his entire life, something any wife would remember. But Emma was making his favorite meal, probably planning to drug it before Kyle arrived to stage the robbery. Running late. Norfolk site has issues. Probably 8 p.m., he texted back. That gave him time. At 3 p.m., Clay arrived at the Hopewell building. He'd spent the previous night researching the property's ownership through back channels. It was owned by a shell corporation registered to Kyle McKee. Interesting. He picked the lock and slipped inside, moving quickly to where Audrey was kept. "Daddy," she whispered urgently. "They were here this morning. Kyle said something about tonight's the night." "I know, Firefly. That's why we're doing this now." Clay pulled out his tools and began working on the padlock. It took 3 minutes to break it open. "Come on. We're going somewhere safe." "What about the other girl?" "Mandy." Clay froze. "What other girl?" "Mandy. She's Kyle's daughter. They make her pretend to be me at your house. She's not mean, just scared. Kyle hits her when she messes up." "Another victim." Clay's jaw tightened. "Where is she now?" "At your house with Wanda. That's what Wanda's real name is. Kyle told her once when he was drunk." Clay carried Audrey to his car, then drove to his best friend's house. Alejandro Haley had been Clay's roommate in college and was now a criminal defense attorney. More importantly, he was trustworthy. "Al, I need you to keep Audrey safe for the next 12 hours. Don't call anyone, don't tell anyone. Can you do that?" Alejandro took one look at Audrey's condition and nodded. "Whatever you need, brother. But after this is done, you're telling me everything." "Deal." Clay drove back to the Hopewell building, Phase 4 of his plan crystallizing. He spent the next 3 hours working, welding, constructing, preparing. The building's layout was perfect for what he had in mind: a single exit, reinforced walls, and a basement that could be sealed off. He'd analyzed the structure yesterday. Now he was modifying it. He set up cameras in every corner, connected to a cloud server. Whatever happened next would be documented from multiple angles. At 6:30 p.m., he called Detective Stanley Francis, the same detective who'd investigated Emma's accident for years ago. "Detective, this is Clay Groves. I have evidence of a murder conspiracy, kidnapping, and identity fraud. But I need you to trust me and follow my exact instructions." "Mr. Groves, if you have evidence." "I have my daughter, the real Audrey, who's been held captive for 4 years. I have video of her imprisonment, DNA evidence that my current wife is an imposter, and proof of a murder-for-hire plot against me scheduled for tonight. But if we move too soon, we won't get Kyle McKee, and he'll disappear." Silence. "Then what do you need?" Clay laid out his plan. "Be at this address at 8:30 p.m. sharp. Not a minute earlier. I'm going to get a full confession, and I'm going to make sure that girl living in my house, Mandy Keith, doesn't get hurt. She's another victim in this. Clay, don't do anything dangerous. Let us handle. They murdered my wife and held my daughter in chains for 4 years, detective. They were going to kill me tonight. I'm handling this, but I'm doing it by the book. Every second will be recorded. Just be there at 8:30. He hung up before Francis could argue. At 7:45 p.m., Clay texted Kyle McKee from a burner phone, spoofing Wanda's number. He's suspicious. Discovered cameras. Need you at Hopewell Building now. Bringing the package. The package being code for Audrey. Then Clay drove home. He entered through the back door, quiet as a shadow. Through the kitchen window, he could see Wanda. He couldn't think of her as Emma anymore, stirring something into a glass of wine. Mandy sat at the dining table, looking miserable. Clay moved quickly, slipping into the house through the garage entrance. He grabbed Mandy's hand before she could scream. "I know you're not my daughter," he whispered. "I know they're forcing you. I'm getting you out. Stay quiet." Tears filled Mandy's eyes as she nodded. They slipped back out through the garage just as Wanda called, "Audrey, dinner." Clay drove Mandy to Alejandro's house. 2 daughters to protect, now Al. "Jesus, Clay. What's going on?" "Justice," Clay said. "Finally." Chapter 5. Load-Bearing Walls. At 8:15 p.m., Clay returned to the Hopewell Building. Kyle's car was already there. He'd taken the bait. Clay could hear him inside, shouting, "Wanda, where are you? Where's the kid?" Clay stepped inside, and Kyle spun around, his hand moving toward his waistband where Clay could see a gun. "Looking for someone?" Clay asked calmly. Kyle's eyes widened. "Groves, what are you doing here?" "This is my building now." "Well, legally it's yours through that shell corporation, but I'm the one who controls it now." Clay gestured to the modifications he'd made. "See, I'm an architect. I understand how structures work, how to turn them into something else entirely." "You're insane. Get out of my way." Kyle pulled the gun, but Clay was ready. He positioned himself near a support beam. He pressed a button on a remote in his pocket, and a steel security door slammed down behind Kyle, sealing off the only exit. "What the hell?" "Insurance," Clay said. "The building's original security system, reactivated. Fire code compliant. It'll open in an emergency. But right now, you're not leaving until we have a conversation." Kyle raised the gun. "I'll shoot you right here. Go ahead. But the police will be here in 10 minutes. I've already sent them everything. Video of you holding my daughter captive, financial records showing embezzlement from my accounts, phone records between you and Wanda discussing my murder." Clay's voice was steel. "Shoot me, and you'll die in prison. Or we can talk, and maybe you can make a deal." Kyle's hand trembled. "You don't know what you're dealing with." "I know exactly what I'm dealing with. You and Wanda killed my wife 4 years ago. You kidnapped my daughter. You've been draining my accounts, living in my house, planning to kill me tonight, and make it look like a robbery." Clay's calm facade cracked slightly. "What I want to know is why. Why Emma? Why us?" Kyle laughed bitterly. "You want the truth? Fine. Wanda's been obsessed with you for years. She met you at that family reunion, 7 years ago? Talked about you constantly. When she found out about your wife's inheritance, the insurance policies, your business, it was too good to pass up. So you murdered her. Wanda did. Orchestrated the whole thing. The drunk driver? That was one of my guys, already dying of cancer. Paid his family 50 grand to do it. The car accident was real, but Emma was already dead when it happened. Wanda had poisoned her coffee that morning, made it look like she'd just passed out from impact." Clay's hands clenched into fists, but he kept his distance. And Audrey, she saw too much. Was in the car when Emma drank the coffee. Saw Wanda do something to her. We couldn't risk her talking, so we kept her. Wanda got the plastic surgery, studied Emma's life from journals and photos. Took her 6 months to perfect it. Kyle's expression turned ugly. Then we grabbed my daughter Mandy from my ex, trained her to play Audrey. It was perfect. We were going to drain you dry, then kill you and disappear. Why not just kill me from the start? Wanda wanted to be Emma for a while. Live the life she thought she deserved. Plus, we needed time to access all your accounts, transfer assets without raising flags. You're worth more than we thought. Almost $8 million in total assets, properties, business equity. A car door slammed outside. Wanda's voice, "Kyle, where are you?" Clay pressed another button. A second security door dropped, sealing the building's other entrance. Wanda's scream echoed through the walls. "What did you do?" Kyle lunged forward, but Clay was faster. He grabbed a pipe wrench he'd positioned earlier and swung hard, connecting with Kyle's wrist. The gun clattered away. They grappled, Kyle's superior size initially overwhelming Clay. But Clay had rage on his side, for years of suppressed fury. He'd spent the last 6 months boxing at his gym, preparing himself without knowing what for. He landed a solid hit to Kyle's jaw, then another to his ribs. Kyle fell, gasping. Clay kicked the gun away and restrained him with zip ties he prepared. "You're going to tell the police everything," Clay said. "Every detail, every person involved. And you're going to testify against Wanda." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you cooperated. Because your daughter Mandy deserves better than you. And because if you don't, I'll make sure every inmate in whatever prison you end up in knows you hurt children." Kyle's face went pale. Wanda was pounding on the security door now, screaming. Clay walked to the intercom system he'd installed. "Hello, Wanda. Or should I call you by your real name?" Silence. Then Clay, "Whatever Kyle told you, he's lying. I love you. I only wanted to help after Emma died. Save it. The police are outside. We have video of Audrey, your confession to Kyle last night about killing me tonight, financial records of every penny you stole. It's over. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Dr. Cherry has the real Emma's DNA records. He's willing to testify that you're not her. We have Audrey, the real Audrey, safe and ready to identify you. We have Mandy, who's already told us everything about how you threatened her." Clay's voice was ice. "You studied me, Wanda. You learned my routines, my business, my life. But you made one mistake. You underestimated what I do to protect my daughter." He pressed a button, and the external security door raised. Police swarmed in, Detective Francis in the lead. "Clay, are you okay?" "Better than okay." Kyle McKee is restrained in the back room. He's confessed to everything on camera. The cameras are streaming to a cloud server, so the footage is preserved. Wanda Gordon is in the front section. You'll find Emma's journals at their apartment on Morrison Street, along with Wanda's surgery records and planning documents. Francis nodded to his officers. "Take the both in. Read them their rights." As Wanda was led past Clay in handcuffs, she spat at him. "You'll never prove Emma's dead. We cremated her body. No evidence." Clay smiled coldly. "Actually, Kyle just told me you poisoned her before staging the accident. That means toxicology in her remains. And I'm betting you kept something of Emma's. You were obsessed enough to do it. When we search your apartment, what'll we find? A trophy? A keepsake?" Her face confirmed it. "They'd find something." "You're a monster," Wanda hissed. "No," Clay said quietly. "I'm a father who got his daughter back. You're the monster, and you're going to spend the rest of your life paying for what you did." Chapter 6. Bearing the Weight. The police station at 11 p.m. was a fluorescent-lit purgatory. Clay sat in an interview room, giving his statement for the 3rd time while Detective Francis recorded everything. "And you're certain you didn't assault Kyle McKee beyond necessary self-defense?" "He had a gun, Detective. I defended myself and restrained him. Your officers can see the weapon was his, and the cameras show everything that happened." Francis nodded. "The cameras are admissible. Everything you did was technically legal. Citizen's arrest, self-defense, and you called us before the confrontation. But Clay, you cut it damn close. If things had gone wrong." "They didn't." Clay's voice was firm. "Is my daughter being examined?" "Dr. Cherry's with her now. Medical team, trauma counselors, the works. She's asking for you." "And Mandy Keith?" "Child Services has her. She's cooperating fully. Her mother died 2 years ago, and Kyle had custody. She's been threatened and abused this whole time. We'll find her a proper foster situation." Francis leaned forward. "Kyle's already trying to make a deal. His lawyer wants to trade testimony for a reduced sentence. Let him. I want Wanda to get everything she deserves. The evidence is overwhelming. We found Emma's wedding ring in Wanda's apartment, along with hospital bracelets from Audrey's birth photo albums. She kept trophies. And get this, she had a journal detailing the whole plan, including Emma's murder. She couldn't resist documenting her perfect crime." Clay closed his eyes. "Thank God for narcissists. There's more. We're investigating their finances and found connections to an identity fraud ring. Wanda and Kyle did this to at least 3 other families over the past decade. Different approach each time, but always targeting widowers or wealthy couples. You weren't there first, Clay. The weight of that settled on Clay's shoulders. How many people did they kill? We're not sure yet, but you stopped them. Those other victims' families will get justice now, too. Hours later, Clay was finally allowed to see Audrey in the hospital. She was in a private room, Dr. Cherry standing nearby with a gentle smile. She's going to be okay, the doctor said. Physically, she's malnourished and has some vitamin deficiencies, but nothing permanent. Psychologically, she'll need time and therapy. But she's strong, like her father. Audrey was awake, her eyes bright despite the exhaustion. Daddy, Clay rushed to her side, pulling her into a careful hug. She was so thin, so fragile. I'm so sorry, Firefly. I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. You found me. That's what matters. She pulled back, searching his face. Is Mommy really gone? Clay's heart broke. Yes, baby. She's really gone. But she loved you so much. Everything she did was to protect you and make you happy. Tears streamed down Audrey's face. I miss her. I miss her too. They held each other, grieving properly for the first time in 4 years. Chapter 7, Demolition. The trial began 6 months later. Clay sat in the courtroom gallery, Audrey beside him. She'd insisted on attending, wanting to see justice served. She was healthier now, putting on weight, laughing again. But the shadows in her eyes remained. The prosecution's case was devastating. They presented video evidence of Audrey's captivity. Dr. Cherry's testimony about Emma's DNA records proving Wanda was an imposter. Mandy Keith's tearful testimony about being forced to impersonate Audrey. Kyle McKee's confession. He'd taken a plea deal for life with possibility of parole after 30 years in exchange for full cooperation. Financial records showing systematic theft of $3.2 million. Wanda's journal detailing the murder plot. Toxicology reports from Emma's cremated remains showing lethal doses of thallium poisoning. The defense tried to argue that Wanda had been manipulated by Kyle, that she was a victim too. But the journal entries destroyed that narrative. They showed calculated planning, excitement about becoming Emma, and detailed fantasies about the life she'd steal. On the 4th day, Clay took the stand. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Eleanor Holden, walked him through his testimony. Mr. Groves, when did you first suspect something was wrong? For years of small things. But I blamed myself, thought I was imagining problems because of grief. It wasn't until Dr. Cherry's warning that I allowed myself to consider the truth. And what did you do when you discovered your daughter's location? I planned carefully. I knew if I went to the police immediately, Kyle might disappear and we'd never recover all the stolen money or find the other victims. I needed a full confession. Some might say you took the law into your own hands. I acted within the law. I documented everything, called the police before the confrontation, and ensured everyone's safety. My priority was getting my daughter back and making sure these people could never hurt anyone else. Wanda's lawyer, a desperate-looking public defender named Stuart Nolan, tried to shake him during cross-examination. Mr. Groves, isn't it true that you were negligent in not recognizing your own wife and daughter were replaced? Clay met his eyes steadily. I was a grieving widower trying to raise a traumatized child while running a business. They had plastic surgery, years to study my family, and they were very, very good at deception. But yes, I blame myself for not seeing it sooner. That's something I'll carry forever. The honesty deflated the lawyer's attack. On the 8th day, Wanda took the stand against her lawyer's advice. She was unrecognizable from the woman who'd lived in Clay's house. Prison had stripped away the carefully maintained appearance. But more than that, her mask had finally cracked. I loved him, she said, her voice breaking. I loved Clay from the moment I met him. Emma didn't deserve him. She was careless with his love, took him for granted. You poisoned her, Eleanor Holden interrupted. You murdered her and kidnapped her child. She would have ruined him. She was going to leave him. Did you know that? I found her journal. She was unhappy, wanted a divorce. I saved him from that pain. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Clay sat frozen. Emma had never mentioned unhappiness. But then again, They'd been going through a rough patch before her death. He'd attributed it to work stress. Eleanor pressed on. So you killed her to save Mr. Groves? And then you planned to kill him too? That was Kyle's idea. I would never. I wanted us to be together. The plan to murder Mr. Groves is in your handwriting in your journal, dated 6 months ago. Wanda's composure shattered completely. He stopped seeing me, stopped touching me. After 2 years, he still looked at me like I was a stranger. I did everything right, studied everything about Emma, became her, and he never loved me, never even liked me. It was supposed to be perfect. So you decided to take his money and his life. I deserved it. I gave up 4 years, had surgery, played the perfect wife, and he gave me nothing. The confession was complete. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, kidnapping, fraud, attempted murder, child abuse. Mandatory life without parole. Kyle McKee received life with possibility of parole after 30 years. Chapter 8. Rebuilding. 18 months after the trial, Clay stood in front of a new building, a community center he designed and funded. The Emma Groves Memorial Center for Families and Healing. It offered free therapy for crime victims, support groups for grieving families, and educational programs about identity fraud prevention. Audrey cut the ribbon, now 12 years old and starting to look like her mother. She'd been in therapy twice a week and was finally starting to heal. She'd returned to school, made new friends, even joined the robotics club. Your mom would be proud, Clay told her. I think she is, Audrey said. I like to think she's watching. Detective Francis approached, now retired but still following the case's aftermath. Thought you'd want to know. We've identified 4 other families that Wanda and Kyle targeted. 2 more murders, several cases of fraud. Because of your evidence, we've been able to bring justice to all of them. Clay nodded. Good. That's good. How are you doing? Really? Better. Some days are harder than others. But I got my daughter back, and that's everything. He paused. I've been thinking about Emma a lot. About whether she really was unhappy, whether I missed signs. Don't torture yourself. Wanda was a liar. That journal entry she mentioned? Probably fake. Something she fabricated to justify her actions to herself. Maybe. But I'm trying to be honest about our marriage. We weren't perfect. And that's okay. I loved her. She loved me. But we were human. I don't need to mythologize her to honor her memory. Francis clapped his shoulder. That's healthy perspective, son. Inside the center, Clay gave a speech to the assembled crowd. Donors, city officials, families they'd helped. He talked about loss, justice, and a long road of healing. He talked about Emma, the real Emma, with all her flaws and beauty. He talked about the importance of vigilance, of trusting your instincts, of fighting for truth. But mostly, he talked about hope. That evening, Clay and Audrey walked through the park near their home. Not the old house, but a new one Clay had designed. Smaller, cozier, without ghosts. Dad, can I ask you something? Always Firefly. Do you think you'll ever get married again? Clay considered the question. Maybe someday. If I meet someone who loves us both, who I can trust completely. But I'm not looking. We're good, just the 2 of us. Audrey smiled. Yeah, we are. They walked in comfortable silence, the setting sun painting the sky orange and gold. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 3 years after the trial, Clay Groves stood in his architecture firm's conference room, presenting a design to a new client. Life had found its rhythm again. Work, parenting, occasional dates that never went anywhere. He was content with that. Audrey, now 15, had started volunteering at the Emma Groves Memorial Center, helping younger kids who'd experienced trauma. She wanted to be a therapist someday, to help others heal the way she'd been helped. Mandy Keith, Kyle's daughter, had been adopted by a loving family and stayed in touch with Audrey. They'd formed a bond, 2 survivors of the same nightmare. Mandy was thriving in school, no longer the frightened child she'd been. The legal aftermath continued. Wanda had filed appeal after appeal, all denied. She'd be in prison for life. Kyle had been denied parole at his first hearing. The board found him to be a continuing danger. He'd serve at least another 20 years before they'd consider it again. The stolen money had been recovered and returned to Clay and the other victims' families. Clay had donated most of his portion to victim advocacy groups and the Memorial Center. One Saturday morning, Clay was working in his home office when Audrey appeared in the doorway. "Dad, I've been thinking about something." "What's up?" "I want to write about what happened. Not for publication or anything, just for me, to process it all. Would that be okay?" Clay set down his pen. "Of course. Writing can be very therapeutic. Will you help me remember the good things about Mom? Not just what Wanda did, but who Mom really was." "I'd be honored." They spent the afternoon looking through photo albums Clay had kept locked away, sharing stories about Emma. The real Emma. Funny, flawed, sometimes scattered, always loving. They laughed and cried, and it felt like another layer of healing. That evening, after Audrey went to bed, Clay stood in his backyard, looking at the stars. He thought about Emma, about the life they'd built and lost. He thought about Wanda's obsession, the delusion that you could become someone else and steal their life. But you couldn't steal a life. You couldn't steal love or trust or the thousand small moments that made a relationship real. Wanda had learned that the hard way. Clay had learned something too, that he was stronger than he'd known. That love for his daughter could sustain him through anything. That justice, while not always swift, could still prevail. He pulled out his phone and looked at a text from Dr. Cherry. "Check out the Times article. Your center just got a major feature. They're calling it a model for victim services nationwide." Clay smiled. Something good had come from the nightmare. Emma's memory was helping others heal. He went inside, locked the door, and climbed the stairs to bed. Tomorrow he'd review blueprints for a new school. Next week, he'd attend Audrey's parent-teacher conference. Next month, they'd take a vacation to Iceland, the trip he and Emma had actually taken on their honeymoon, a place Audrey had never seen. Life went on. Wounds healed. The foundation they'd almost lost was rebuilt, stronger than before. And somewhere, he hoped, Emma was at peace, knowing her family had survived and justice had been served. The story of Clay Groves was one of patience, intelligence, and a father's unbreakable love. He'd faced evil wearing a familiar face and had defeated it not with rage or violence, but with careful planning and the truth. In the end, that was the best revenge of all, living well, protecting what mattered, and ensuring that those who tried to destroy his family would spend their lives paying for it. The architect had built something new from the rubble, not just buildings, but hope itself. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.